Hello. Okay. So let me just kick myself off. Yep. Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for your patience. Dr. Pallardy is with us now. We found the solution to the problem. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to just do a couple of quick housekeeping items, and then our president, Joe Martinez, is here. So we'll let him say a few words before we hand it over to Dr. Pallardy to help us take care of our mental health today. We will have time for questions and answers at the end. I'm going to mute everybody while Dr. Pallardy is presenting, and he does have some slides that will be shared afterwards as well, along with this entire presentation. But if you have a question as he's going along, feel free to use the chat function down at the bottom. It looks like the little speech bubble, and I can feed those in. And then, as I mentioned, we'll unmute at the end, and there will be time for Q&A as we go. I would also recommend that up at the top right corner, if you're doing this on a desktop or laptop, you have the option for either speaker view or gallery view. I recommend speaker view. That way you'll be able to see the slides full screen, and then Dr. Pallardy's picture will also kind of pop up, and you won't have kind of the tile of our other guests. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Joe, and so he can say hello, and then we'll let Dr. Pallardy get started.
Thanks again, Margaret. And thank you, Dr. Tom Pallardy, for your willingness to host this Lunch and Learn for us. Obviously, as a school, we're very fortunate and blessed to have Tom working in our building, helping our families, helping, and most importantly, helping our students during times of need. But even if it's not during times of need, it's the opportunity for them to continue to have his proper guidance and mentorship throughout their time here at St. Lawrence. He obviously does a wonderful job with the students and all of us faculty and staff that love to bend his ear throughout the year, because most times within the school settings not easy and can become very stressful. So during this time when social isolation has become a lot of our current lives, it's great to be able to have Tom as a resource for us as a school, for our students, and for our families. So thank you, Tom, for your willingness to do this, and thanks to our families and those alum that are interested in hearing more about how we could best prepare and work on our mental health during these times. So thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate those kind words. I even got dressed up for this thing today. This is all right. So hello,
looking
everybody. Thanks a lot. I hope everybody's doing well out there today. And a couple things as we go into these, we've been in these challenging times for a while, but like anything else that we experience, you know, it's not what happens, it's how we respond to it. So to me, what's really important is that we develop just have some ideas and be able to share thoughts and information with each other so that we can best handle what comes into our life. So I was fortunate enough to be working last week, attended a webinar and did some work with Alyssa's Mission, which is the program we use here for our sophomores every year, the last 3 years, to assess suicide risk and also depression. And we've been very fortunate to be part of their program, which is fully funded by Alyssa's Mission. And when I attended this webinar and spoke with some people and saw the PowerPoint they were using, I actually thought this was just ideal for exactly what we needed here. And so I've got some slides. So Margaret, I don't know if you want to put those up there for us, but we'll go through some things. And of course, you can always fire away questions. And first of all, I want to start with this PowerPoint program was put together by Nancy Butler. She's with MindWise, which teams up with Alyssa's Mission, and she works out of the Riverside Trauma Center. Nancy really put together a nice little program here. So I talked to her and told her I was going to steal her stuff for this presentation today, and she was wanted us to do that. She was very thankful, as well as Jody Siegel from Alyssa's Mission. They're really happy that we're doing things to educate our families. Okay, moving right along. We'll have some time for questions, as Margaret mentioned, and thank you, Margaret, for the intro, and also for helping me out with the technology issues.
My pleasure.
And, so the SOSMindwise.org, that's a resource that if anybody has any concerns about signs of suicide, that if obviously, you know, I'm here as a resource, but that would be a place to go in the event, you know, it was a weekend situation or I wasn't available. And at the end, we can send recordings of this program, and at least a PowerPoint, to whoever's interested in that. I don't know, Margaret, if you were going to send it to everybody or what your plan is on that. Maybe you can address that.
Yeah, we can go ahead and we'll send both the PDF slides and the recording to anybody, and that can also be available if somebody inquires afterwards.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much. So let's move on. Let's go to work. Okay, next slide, please. There we go. All right. So I think in order to deal with stress, we have to know what it is. And obviously, it's a really healthy, positive thing. There is nothing that you or I do without having some stress involved. And it's a very normal physical response to anything that comes into our life. For example, if right now in the room you're in, if the doorknob turned, you and I would look at the doorknob and we would be wondering exactly what was happening. That's a stress response. And as you can see in the slide, that we can really rust out if we don't experience stress. So at the top, the optimum level is the ability to cope with it and also handle what it is that comes our way. If we look at things and we're creative and we feel like we have effective solutions and we can pay attention to it, we usually do really well. That's actually motivation. But if we feel like we're not involved or we're actually bored with an experience, that leads to eventual rust out, which means we just kind of do nothing. Life's boring, which, by the way, is happening to a lot of people that I'm talking to right now. Not only here, but my private practice with people are really bored in a lot of ways. So, you know, what we want to do is take a look at the other end of that, which is burnout. And that obviously happens like anything else. If you're using any tool and you're continuously using it, or your car, with time, if you don't have upkeep and opportunity to make things, you know, repair and maintain things, they break. And you and I are the same exact way. We're no different. So we do need to have time to rest. We need time to play. And, you know, the stress response is for our protection. So I think what we have to do is pay really close attention to our bodies to let us know when we're, you know, reaching extremes at either end. So as we move on here, just the 3 types of stress that all of us experience. And the positive is and this is motivation, by the way, the increase in heart rate, your elevation in stress hormones, and this is what makes us want to do something when we feel this heart rate increase. When things come in our lives, such as a cold, or even especially now, if you have any symptoms like a difficulty breathing or coughing, that might fit into the tolerable thing area here of stress, type of stress, because we look at it as this could be serious. We hope it's temporary. But what's really helpful for stressors that we don't see as positive would be supportive relationships. So the interaction with other human beings and animals. Where we get in trouble is that toxic type of stress. And the toxicity can be created if it's an ongoing stressor that we feel like we have no control over, and we're talking to someone about it, but they don't seem to hear us or don't understand us, so we feel very alone. And so that toxicity builds up just as it would in an automobile with engine oil. If you don't change it, you know that engine is going to be damaged eventually. And you and I, if we don't have a place to put it and a way to refresh, which is through relationships, it can become very toxic and have all sorts of negative effects on you and I, physically and of course mentally. So let's move on here. Let's talk a little bit about, people talk about trauma, and like right now, what I hear a lot is people talk about these traumatic times. Well, I don't know. I suppose that's how you're looking at it. I mean, obviously, if someone in your family is ill from the coronavirus, you're going to feel this is a trauma. And so it's difficult to take care of business if we don't know what business we're taking care of. And then you and I have no clue when we walk outside or go into a store or whatever we have to do when we leave our homes in this time of lockdown. We don't know where that enemy is at, so to speak. So it's very difficult to be prepared and handle it. And so some of us begin to feel that it's overwhelming. And this can be really difficult on not only us emotionally, but physically as well. So the three items at the bottom of this slide that I would want to mention: the loss of control, vulnerability, immobilization. I think the last one is where we know we're really in trouble. We really need to reach out and get some support somehow. And that's usually the time we don't want to, because we feel immobilized. Being vulnerable is one thing. We're all vulnerable to lots of things, but obviously, as you can see, there's a bit of lack of control right now in our world because of this hidden monster, if you will. And yet, when I heard myself say monster, my body reacted to that. I think I'll call it this thing that we don't know. I don't want to call it a monster anymore. All right. So let's move forward here. So everything you and I experience has an immediate effect and a long-term effect. And what we know about anything that's seen as traumatic or extremely stressful or more stressful or not controllable, it affects people who don't have those relationships I was mentioning or feel alone. People who try to turn to someone, but they're told, just tough it out. And I think we've all said that to people and also had that said to us at times. And at times I think that's appropriate, because we do have to learn how to cope if we're going to survive anything that we experience. But I think what we need to be aware of is the long-term effects of if we constantly don't have people to relate to, we're struggling with finances. Some of you right now that are at home with your children that have not been there, especially the little ones. Man, I've had a lot of people calling up saying, are there babysitters we can obviously the childcare is something that parents need a break from the kids too. And now with the obviously with finances for everybody, this can create a lot of stress for us. So it's weird because right now we're being told to social distance, which is what we have to do from a scientific standpoint, because we don't know where this virus is, and it's the unknown of who's carrying and how long it stays where. So we're told separate, and yet the way to create resilience is to unite. So that physical separation is important, but we can physically separate and still feel a connection. So the ideal world right now is to maintain that distance, but also to know that we do need people. We need to feel connected to people and other animals so that we can be resilient and bounce back from things. So let's move right along here. So here's some continuums that I'm not going to go through every one of them, but these are areas that all of us experience, and you know, we're all in different spots in each category. Emotionally, sometimes we experience an overwhelming feelings, and the other part is sometimes we have great positive feelings, and so any one of us at any given time can be anywhere in the continuum. When we have things that are uncontrollable taking place, it moves us over towards the negative feelings and emotions that we experience. Also, the cognition part is that we all, you know, like for me, my memory isn't as good as maybe Joe's, or I don't know, because I think we know with age, it's like a computer. You get more junk in there, and you got to sift through things to get to certain spots. Well, that's a norm of aging, but I know where I'm at and what's my norm as far as remembering things and thinking clearly. When we have high stress levels, we get more kind of frustrated, and we can't remember things as well, and we can't stay focused on tasks, which of course, then we're all talking about finding solutions to problems, but if we're really stressed, we can't do that cognitively. Some things that we can look at just physically would be, you know, the feeling overwhelmed, stomach aches. One thing that I want to mention to you is what I mentioned previously about, I felt when I called this thing a monster, I could actually feel a change in my body. And so that's the physical part we're talking about. You're startled easily, a little more, you know, get angry quicker. And fatigue and exhaustion, of course, they're physical signs that are telling us that these stressors may be taking a toll on us. And in relationships, you know, obviously these are common sense things that if we're constantly in arguments and fighting, what we're really saying is we're feeling like we're losing control again. And so in relationships, we really need to be able to interact safely and talk about things in healthy ways and be able to reach out and say, you know, I need some help today. And, you know, the last part, which, by the way, a lot of times I talk about three-legged bar stool, if you will. The body, the mind, our thinking, and the spiritual component. And if you have the stool with three legs and one of them is missing, that stool is going to obviously have a difficult time holding anybody up. So that spiritual part is huge. And, you know, right now, I think there's a lot of people saying, hey, if there's a God, what's this all about? Why would God do this to us? Well, we can stay there, but I think that's going to give us a sense of lack of control, and maybe to look at God, or to even do spiritual things. And by the way, spiritual things don't necessarily have to be religion. Of course, we're talking about ways to heal, finding meaning and hope. And I just want to mention here, because I don't want to forget this, there's an app available out there called Headspace, and relatively cheap. And it's a way, a lot of people have never meditated or, you know, struggle with that. But this Headspace app teaches people how to begin, and takes you through like 1 minute segments, and then 3, and then 5. And that app is one that I found a lot of people felt very comfortable with, learning how to relax. And that also is part of the spiritual component, is settling down so we can think about what we want that brings meaning to us, and what we're living for, quite frankly. Okay. So what we're looking for here in this time, you know, we'll call it a time of trauma, but let's talk about trauma-informed care. So the main thing that we need, this is you people that have experienced, Psychology 101 have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the first thing we need is safety. We have to feel that our environment is comfortable. I know at school here, we're always concerned about, making the building more safe. And that's huge, because if people don't feel safe, they can't learn or can't have healthy relationships. Predictability is one that, it's not happening right now, but we need to somehow create predictability for ourselves. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then finally is control. I've often said and talk to people when they come in the office and they say, well, I'm here because I don't have any control of things in my life right now. And I've mentioned, maybe one day I'm going to put big gold block letters on the door on the top that say control room, so that people can come in and realize that the only control we have is none. We have control of what we can physically handle. We have control of what we do with our thoughts. We don't have control of our thoughts that come into our mind. But, we need to create in this time right now those three things: safety, predictability, and control. And I'll address a few of those in a few moments. Okay, Margaret. So let's talk about safety first. The bottom line is this is not just external safety, a fence around the house. We're talking about internally feeling safe, that we can trust people in relationships. And also that we obviously need the fence outside to protect us sometimes, but that the outside goes with the inside. We can't separate it. We have to feel a sense of security. And right now, we're all being challenged, how do I feel safe? The control part again, well, if we feel like we can do something, that's empowerment. Or if someone gives us a job to do, we're empowered. And then we have options and choices. And the way that's created is to talk. When we talk about with people, we're collaborating, and it gives us a sense of being part of something. So that is controlling. And by the way, I would like to point out that what's huge is that we focus on what we can do, not the things that are not controllable, the strengths, to look ahead at what we want, not what we want to avoid. And of course, keeping expectations high. Like, even though we're struggling in this time with even with the e-learning, I know the kids, they're doing well with it, but they struggle to, it's got to be a challenge for them to maintain the high expectations. So that's something that they're going to need adults to push them towards. And the other part that on the last slide was in the middle, the predictability. We just have to know the routine in the bottom line. So the more routine we can create even in our homes now, while we're all together, that's huge. And we have to allow, knowing that there's going to be things that are going to pop up unexpectedly. And when they do, that's okay. Because if we feel we have some safety and control, we're going to handle those triggers with not too difficult of a problem. I do want to mention, though, the organization of the day is huge. Somehow having time or slots to do things. So let's move on. So you've heard these things over and over and over again, I hope. And the physical safety part, and the washing hands, and there was a challenge put out by the Surgeon General that suggested we wash our hands once an hour now, and that gives us a time frame. It won't be perfect, but it will be better. And we're all going to have to be in this together, as far as the people losing income, some people in unsafe home settings, being lonely. We can reach out. If one of us reaches out to one person that we know might fit that category, I think we're really being helpful, and we're also gaining a sense of control for ourselves. So it's selfish, if you will, in a positive way. And the other is, limiting the media exposure to we're here, you can turn on the TV any time of the day and be exposed to the news and the battles within, if you will. It's not doing anybody any good to hear it over and over again. We all need to hear it, but I think we need to limit how much exposure we have to that. And there's some things in the bullet point under internal emotional safety there that you can do. I like the idea of the living room dance parties, by the way. I'm a great dancer, so if anybody, maybe one day we could do like a virtual living room dance or something like that. I'd be glad to partake in that. So, and also just staying connected. And by the way, we want to make sure here that we're reaching out to students who might be isolated. And I'd like to suggest that's for the adults too. That fits into what I was talking about. If we all reached out to one person, that'd be a lot of people. And patience and kindness is huge in this time that we're in. Okay, let's move ahead. I already addressed this to a degree. Our routines and rituals are huge, as best we can do it. Everything's changed, and but now we create a new routine, new rituals, and I think that to do that, I always talk about a friend. I have a friend in my pocket called time. Time is always there to say, you need to get this done now. And time's also there to say, do you really need to have this done now? And so if we use our friend time that's always with us, time will give us what we need. Those deadlines, the things we need to do today so we're ready for tomorrow. And by the way, one of the things with students that's really huge is not only talk about that, because their brain, lasts about 10 seconds and then they're on another thought. I think we need to talk about it and then actually have our students and our kids and maybe even each other write out a plan. Because now you're using both sides of the brain, so it becomes a memory that's easier to recall. And also with a written plan, people can go back and say, I thought we were going to do this. And then you can discuss it if it's a bad plan to rewrite it. So the schedules are really important, which leads to organization. And to be organized, lists are nice, but I think we have to be more concerned about objectives. What are we trying to achieve? And then we set up our goals. And to organize things that way, even in this lost time, that will create a sense of control again. So we're back to that, obviously, that same point. And the other thing is, I think it's huge to openly communicate. If somebody's having a bad day, they have to be okay telling somebody that. Just like if you're having a good day, we need to communicate that as well. I think that's huge. So, okay, let's move along, Margaret. So, the difference between having feelings and being out of control. We talk about choices for students. I think where we can make a mistake is just telling people what to do, because then they don't have control. And so they need to know that they're part of the decision-making process and part of the discussion, although they don't have the final answer. And when we're talking about, even in our families, it's kind of like if we're going to have one person telling everybody else what to do, then somebody's going to feel not in control, which is going to create that, again, that feeling that we talked about earlier. And when we feel that way, we respond negatively. Also, there's a whole school of psychology called positive psychology, which I really like. And it's part of, let's focus on what we're strong at and what we can do, instead of talking about what we're not good at. We know what we're not good at, and then it becomes a choice if we want to put time into it to make it a strength. And by the way, one of the most beautiful things about service hours and kids sometimes don't even know why they're doing it. They just don't understand it. They think it's annoying, but helping others. And when we help others, it really is like fertilizer on the front lawn at this time of the year. You know, by helping someone else, I get the sense that I am helping. And that is huge for self-esteem, feeling like I'm a good human being, even though we all mess up. We all make mistakes, and sometimes we feel like that front lawn that doesn't look too good. But we can always, you know, get some fertilizer on it, get it growing again. So we do want to find ways that are to master things, but we don't want to solve problems for other people. And I don't think that, I think we have to let people feel powerful enough that they can solve things. We can be there to help them, but they need to make the final decisions. So we're a little bit vulnerable right now, but we're definitely not out of control. So let's move forward, Margaret. This is just a visual that I thought was pretty cool on what's controllable and what's not. You know, there's a lot of craziness going on outside of people who, you know, some people don't believe in the virus. Okay, that's their choice, I suppose. But I can't control that, so why would I spend time on that? What do I care? I mean, I feel bad that they may get sick and they might, you know, have an effect on other people, but I can't control that. So I need to let go. And letting go is sometimes very difficult to do. I think that's you know, it's the Serenity Prayer that we're really talking about. God grant me the serenity to accept the things to change the things I can. I forget how it goes, but the bottom line is know what's controllable and the wisdom to know the difference. And one of the things that we can control is how we treat other people. So I think that's huge. And there was one thing, I just want to take a quick look at this. There was one that I pointed out here. Where was it here? Predicting what will happen. Well, we're all good at making our own predictions, but who really knows? I don't. So anyway, let's move on. So I thought this was an awesome slide that was put in here. Beware of the stories you tell. You'll be lived by them. You know, people remember us by what we talk about. And so we're going to live a life filled with what we're telling people about the world. In other words, that's something that's controllable. I think we have to be careful about the stories we tell, especially about others, because we don't ever really know why somebody does what they do unless we've been in their moccasins, so to speak. You know, the old Indian proverb. You haven't walked in my shoes for 100 miles, so how do you know me? So I thought this was really a great slide to put in here. And by the way, the picture there, I don't know if you saw and see on the bottom of it, it talks about Florida sucks. And I don't know. I've been to Florida. I didn't think so, but I guess this person did. So that's their story. So, okay, let's move along. And so we're all responsible. We talk about our families and talk about others and what we have to do for others. But bottom line is we've got to take care of ourselves. And if we're not willing to do something, then we probably need to be quiet. And I think that's huge. That self-care means that I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to live this way. So enough said there about self-care. And we're getting close to the end here. When we do these 3 R's, we are taking care of ourselves. On the bottom right of the screen, there's the different parts of us, what makes us who we are. And, I think it's this time now, there's a lot of reflection going on. A lot of people are thinking about things they've never thought about before. I think it's important to regulate our reactions to things, because if I'm seeing things and emotionally reacting to it, that's sending a message to everybody else. That's my story. And what we want to be aware of is strong emotions are contagious, so why not send out positive ones? if we can be positive in a strong way, other people will catch that. And we also need to know those areas that we kind of aren't so good at, and be willing to accept that and not have it hurt us so much. And when we get angry or hurt, you know, maybe we just need to learn how to breathe a little bit better. So finally, the relaxation part, you know, please don't lose your sense of humor. I mean, you know, we've got to have it. It's got to be there. And, you know, sometimes I think mine's better than it really is. As a matter of fact, I know that it's not. So I'm not real good at the humor part, but I try, and I'm going to keep on trying. And it is what it is, you know. So don't forget that sense of humor, and yet be realistic with our limitations as well. So let's go ahead and move forward, Margaret, if you would. So, oh, that's the last one. I'm sorry. These are some webinars that I attended here, and we did the resources that are listed here on this page, mindwise.org. If there's any parents out there that are looking for tips and things, you can use that website, and it would be very helpful. So, at this time, I guess I suppose it's time to open it up. If there's any questions or anything.
Absolutely. So feel free, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself. There's a little microphone button that right now should have a red line through it. You can unmute that. If you'd prefer to ask your question more confidentially, you can privately chat it to either me or Dr. Pallardy in the chat function. And I'm happy, you know, I know we said 12 to 12:45. I know we got started a little late. So I'm happy to leave this meeting room open too if you'd like to stay in chat. Don't feel, you know, rushed by the time. I did want to also add, Dr. Pallardy, that Headspace does offer an educator discount. You do have to be verified, but if you sign up for the app through that, you can get a discount. I believe they offer that to first responders as well.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other resources if somebody is, you know, outside of obviously our students having, you know, great access to you and your colleagues here at school, other resources that you would recommend for folks who are looking for somebody to talk to, or maybe some specific tips and tricks?
You know, there's a lot of resources that are available, but one of the things that I know that this Alyssa's mission has, if you go, they have a website and they have a resource page at the bottom, at the, you know, on their website, and that would be a place to go for ways of dealing with depression, anxiety. Also, in the event if somebody feels that they know somebody who may have suicidal thoughts or tendencies. But you know, in our world, one of the things that I'm noticing now with in particularly the younger people is a week ago they were saying how awesome it was to not have, you know, to go to school and stuff, and now they're, you know, it's just a strong movement that they want to get back to school, and they're tired of video games. I didn't think I'd ever hear that, but there are you know, resources available. One of the things that I was asked yesterday actually was about video games, that one person was feeling like they were doing too much, you know, their children were using video games too much, and how much is too much. And so there's actually Rosecrans Hospital has resources available for people that are concerned about that, you know, people who might be gaming to an addictive perspective. So that would be another resource that would be available.
Hey, Tom, I know you said resilience was built through that social interaction.
Yes.
And without necessarily having that as much, what are other tips potentially we can do to build that resiliency while we're here at home? You know, and that aligns kind of with what the students are experiencing now. How do we get them to keep pushing through, knowing that, you know, we might end up in this situation through the rest of the year, but to keep that positive attitude and, you know, kind of move along with it.
I think part of that is being able to let them voice their frustrations with people that they can communicate with, and particularly their parents. And a lot of times we hear it as just, you know, complaining, but there's this buildup of anxiety that they're experiencing now, being, you know, quarantined, if you will. So I think that to become a better communicator creates more resilience. You know, when we're talking about it into, by the way, the key to changing emotional perspectives is empathy. So if we can put ourselves in and truly hear the person, what they're saying, without looking to answer a question, because sometimes the best thing we can do is to be supportive, especially in these things where we don't know. And one question, as you're just talking about, when are we going back to school? Don't know. And to be real and to be able to, you know, for the adult regarding students to be able to, or children to be able to say, I don't know, and I'm very frustrated as well. So they know it's okay to be feeling that frustration. Frustration is not, the only time it stops resiliency is when there's nowhere to put it. But if parents can interact with kids and say, yeah, this is a real rough time. Yeah. So after we get done talking about how this sucks, if you will, let's talk about what we want to do now and move on to doing something, because now you've given them permission to experience what they are truly experiencing, and then they can move forward to knowing that, oh, now we do something else. And you know, the board games, it's unbelievable how many people I've talked to that are talking about old board games that I didn't think I'd ever see again. You know, they're back, and people with the, you know, puzzles and things like that. It's really awesome. But I think doing, you know, by the way, there's a connection from the fingertips to the amygdala part of the brain, that if we are experiencing that anger or frustration or not knowing what to do, you know, if you use your hands, that triggers release of hormones, chemicals in the amygdala to calm down. So if we can get them doing something with their hands, that will build resilience. They're going to be doing something where now, you know, it's the oldest thing for adolescents. They'll talk more when they're busy rather than sitting in a one-on-one conversation, because that creates discomfort. So if they can be moving while they're talking, that's awesome. And so you know, maybe moving with them, you know, like moms and maybe dads even baking a cake and putting the kid get into the dough, you know. Just little things like that in our homes, I think, you know, I think will create resilience. The way to say, oh, I'm getting through this, I'm making it.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Pallardy, we got a question wondering if there were sessions like this available for students, and kind of what kinds of resources the school is offering in an ongoing way to students.
So we have been, I know Assistant Principal Clemens has been sending out constant reminders of availability for students with their counselors, and I think our teachers, from the feedback I'm getting from kids I've spoken to, I think the teachers are doing a pretty good job of having the kids feel supported. One of the recommendations is having a hangout. By that I'm talking about, you know, a place where kids can just bring up things. But what's happening that I've heard from our students is a lot of them are feeling like they can bring up having every day, and aren't having classes every day, so they're kind of isolated more. But you know, at any time the students here can reach out through email or phone call, as far as that goes, to their counselor to talk about whatever it is that they're concerned with. So that would be it for right now that I'm aware of.
Oh, sorry for the background noise. There's also a suggestion that was submitted too, that maybe an all school session or something organized might be good for students who aren't good at reaching out or maybe don't feel comfortable doing that. So I thought I would pass that along as well. And I guess maybe to kind of wrap up, can you share with us maybe a little bit about like what you've been doing to kind of manage the stress or the anxiety, kind of the uncertainty that comes with this? Maybe something that a professional does that we could take into our own lives?
Well, Headspace is one of them.
It's wonderful. It's great.
Yeah. And, one of the things I've always done, but I'm more aware of now, I am doing more. I take a 10 to 15 minute time out of the day to stop. I just call it stop time. And, an opportunity to shut off everything and just breathe. It's almost similar to a meditation process, but not using Headspace, of course. And the other thing is I know I've been doing a lot of reading, but reading things other than, trauma, trying to read things that are more positive. And of course, getting the steps in and the exercise is a huge part of this. So, for myself, I know that I need to get more of that in there, but it's real easy for us to talk about things, but that's why I think the structure of the day is so important. And by the way, I do that. I time block my day and just put things in. And I also create what I call a black box. And that's a time where I don't have anything so that I can disengage. And then the other is, being aware of opportunities to reach out to other people. One thing I've done the past 2 weeks is, and I did it almost every day, is to reach out to a family member, a cousin that I haven't talked to in years. Just to reach out and feel that connection that, I was talking about earlier. And also, to remember those people that are having the most difficult time, and even a phone call is, I don't think the emails are so powerful because, that there's not that human interaction, but a voice on the phone can be very powerful to these people who are alone, or, just want to feel connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share all of this with us. I feel like there's a lot of pragmatic, easy to include stuff and ways to expand maybe some things that we're already doing to help make this a little bit more manageable for us and for our families, and kind of to be the best versions of ourselves while we're all kind of stuck at home weathering this out. So thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and appreciate the opportunity, and I hope there was something that was helpful for people out there.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we will share the slides, we will share the recording, and I will go ahead and leave this open. If you need to get back to work, to e-learning, to the kids, feel free, but if you'd like to stick around and ask a question, I'll leave this open until 1 o'clock, and you're welcome to stick around and ask.
Great. I'll be here too.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, Joe. Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, Trish.
Thanks, Trish.
Bye, Trish.
It's nice to see so many faces.
Wow. I didn't even know Adam was still out there.
I am. My back's killing me from sitting at the table all day, though. I had to sit at the plank here for a little bit.
I was ready